Hey guys, welcome to another episode of our TNCBA Recap Show. This show is presented to us by Uncle Ray's Potato Chips and by Tri-Cities Logistics. We want to thank those sponsors for what they've done for us this year. Uncle Ray's just sponsored the event on Boone, and Tri-City Logistics is going to be sponsoring our event coming up on Watauga. We got Kelsey here again with us as our co-host. And we're going to be talking about Boone Lake. We're going to be talking about how that day broke down. It was the first good cold front that we've had this year. The fish really turned on compared to what the practice reports had been. And I have to say, Kelsey, I was stressed out going into this one. I was worried from the reports we were getting.
Me too.
Yeah,
Me
they
too.
were not good. The bite had been slow. Tournaments were tough. It had been tough through the summer and stuff, but the things really turned around for us. And then, guys, we're going to preview Watauga and talk about that AOY points race and the TOY points race and how things are tightening up and getting crazy. So, Kelsey, bud, let's get into it, man.
All right.
All right, so I'm going to just go ahead and run through these results, guys, and then we're going to break down those patterns. So you can see that we changed it up a little bit. We went to just 3 fish limit because everybody was really worried about those weights and they were worried about the catches. Kelsey, I had heard like people catching 1, 2 fish
Oh
all
yeah.
day long. What else had you been hearing leading up to that tournament?
Oh yeah. No. I mean, from what I've heard, I mean, you're doing good if you go out there and catch a keeper, was what a lot of people were saying. So I mean, it was really a lot of doom and gloom before we even got there. I mean, that's what we heard. So I mean, we had very low expectations for the lake.
Very much so. So, guys, we changed it to a 3 fish limit to try to help make it more competitive. Guys were catching a few keepers when they went out to practice. And did keep the weights tight. You can see here that Harvey and Harvey knocked it out of the park with 876 in their 3 fish. Pope and Oling are coming in second with 759 in 3. Snyder and Snyder with 581. Then the father-son duo of Van Dyke and Van Dyke with 572 in their 3 fish, and then Dyson and Dyson there in 5th place with 534. So there was still that upper echelon. Like there was those 2 teams, you all and then Pope and Oling, were able to kind of break away a little bit, and create some separation there. So let's jump into the conditions, Kelsey. And I know you talked to me about it while we were at the end of the day there, but go through just how the conditions changed throughout the day for you all on the water and what was going on.
I mean, we get out there first thing in the morning and on the drive to the lake starts to rain, of course. So I mean, which was to be expected with the front coming in and everything. But get there, it's raining, but it's not windy or anything really bad. I mean, it's kind of calm. It's just a soft little rain. And then as the day goes on, we have some of those fronts where they're just really pushing through, and you have some crazy wind come through, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
I mean, so I haven't seen wind like that in a long time on the water. So
I mean, there was times I had that trolling motor cranked up to 10, man, just to hold it in one spot.
Hold you still. I mean, that made it really tough. I mean, and if you look in some of the video that we had, especially where Dad and I were fishing, I mean, I would run back to the back of the boat and make my cast and fish just to keep the nose of the boat into the wind, and then start working my bait and work back there, and then come back up there and fix the boat again and do it again. Just try to get to the fish.
It's time for spot lock, my brother. It's time for spot lock, man.
I agree.
It's coming.
I agree.
It's coming. But yeah, so I mean, the wind picking up, and you can see here, guys, from the chart that the wind really picked up there right after 7 a.m., a little after 6, because that's when the rain started rolling. And then we had those big gusts roll through at 9. And as much as I hated that wind and as much as I hated that rain, it's still what turned those fish on for us and got things going for us. So we had the front push through with rain and gusty winds, and it stayed kind of windy the rest of the day. The water conditions we had, guys, the lake was down about 6 feet from where it is at full pool, and we had falling water, and there was some good clarity. Now, Kelsey, I want to jump over here again to kind of this lunar table here. You can see that there was kind of a rise about 8 o'clock once we got started. And I know for you all and for Dad and I as well, like that early bite was on fire, right?
Oh yeah.
Definitely. I mean, you all had your all 3 keepers and what?
We took off at what, 7:15?
Yeah.
And by 7:45 we had our limit. So
and then
it was
and I still also saw, like, you can see that next peak there between 10 and 12, and then you can see that it bottomed out. And for me and Dad, it got super tough in the afternoon. We still picked up some fish here and there.
Yeah.
but it definitely was not anything like that before 12 o'clock time period had been. So guys, let's jump into our 3 patterns. Kelsey, I'm just going to let you run with this one, man, and then we'll talk about second and third, but you jump in there and tell us what you all did, what you were thinking, what your focus was, heading into this thing.
So, I mean, here's the thing. We really didn't know what to expect. It was a lot of conversations Dad and I had just trying to figure out where are we going to start. And then towards the later end of the week, I was like, well, let's just go here. And he said, you know what, let's try it. I said, it's got the type of water we're looking for, close to the main channel, but it's kind of got a shelf that those fish will come up and feed on. And that's what you want to look for this time of year. I mean, I'm not afraid to fish any flats or anything because they're going to need a place to push those fish up.
Yep.
But
that's the dinner plate.
So, I mean, we're looking at a place where they can do that and go back out and recoup out there in that deeper water too. We started off in the morning. I was throwing top water first thing, and then dad was as well. And then, we just first thing in the morning, you're all over the place switching baits up. So he decided to pick up jerkbait, and he caught 2 fish. Basically had 3 fish and 3 casts hooked. Off next to the side of the boat. He had his next fish in the boat, and I said, okay, I'm going to pick up a jerkbait because we have a little running joke whenever Dad starts laying it on me with something like that, and I'm stubborn. So I've gotten better to where I'm like, you know what, I see what's working. I'm going to change it up, and we're going to do it. So shortly after that, I make my first cast with my jerkbait and hook into our big fish of the tournament. So, I mean,
and what was she for?
419, I want to say 419. It was
beautiful smallmouth, beautiful smallmouth.
Yeah. And I mean,
now that was your first, you told me that was your first jerkbait fish too, wasn't it?
That's the first fish that I've ever landed on a jerkbait. I've hooked several, but that's the first one I've ever
getting
landed.
them in the boat was a different story.
Yeah, it was a different story. I mean, really, I was lucky to get that one in the boat because it wasn't even really hooked. I mean, got it in the net, got it in the boat, and I went to unhook it, and basically the hook was just curled around its lip. It wasn't even punctured. So, I mean,
and guys, if you go watch and listen to the video, you hear them in the back of the boat, like just panicked and nervous the whole time they're trying to fight this thing. And you hear the elation from them once they do land it and get it in the boat. That was awesome.
Yeah.
So the jerkbait early, and then
jerkbait early. We we really didn't upgrade after we got our limit, but I mean, we did catch a lot of fish, continuing to throw a jerkbait. Okay. Then I moved on to some different spots, throwing a spinnerbait around that timber, the brush that's sticking up, swim bait and Kitex. Okay. Picked up a few more fish. I had caught 1 or 2 on a tube, but jerkbait was our key bait for the day.
And guys, we'll get more into exactly what their setup was with the jerkbait here in just a little bit, but we'll jump through the others. One thing to notice again, them with the jerkbait, Pope and Olinger, you see here, spook early on the inside of a main channel point. So again, still near some main channel water, some deeper water. And then later on in the day, Pope picked up a jig, of course, and a Ned rig, and he started to do some damage later on main lake points with that jig and Ned rig. And guys, the sun did pop out later, and that played a big part in how things kind of changed. And then Snyder did their damage early too with a spinnerbait. They had some schooling fish. They were up on the Holston side, and they had some schooling fish going on, and they were catching them with a spinnerbait and a little bit of a Kitech and spinnerbait later, but it really died off for them as well. The one thing I want to say about all of those baits early in the morning is upper water column. Upper water column. Those fish are feeding up. They're looking up, and just like Kelsey talked about, it was boom, boom, boom that those fish were starting to bite for them, and having those bites almost 3 in a row and catching them really quick.
And I'll say this. I mean, I really think location was key with us.
Yeah.
I mean, we got lucky with the spot we pulled up onto. I mean, I'll just say that. I mean,
well, the thing is, like, what's so hard right now is there's not keeper bass swimming around everywhere. And like, so pulling up on the right spot where there's some quality fish feeding, which is what you all did. That's what Pope and Olinger did. That's what the Snyder boys did. Pulling up there at the right spot that had quality fish feeding. Because when you let me know, you're like, hey, man, we got our limit. And it's only been 30 minutes. Like me and Dad were catching tons and tons of fish. I think we had probably 25 to 30 fish by 9 o'clock. But the problem was, I mean, we landed in the nursery. We pulled out there on that little hump and with the Kitech and with his silver buddy went to work, but we couldn't find anything bigger than, I mean, we couldn't get a 12-inch spot. And that's like, that's what's crazy to me. But, and that's the other thing. You look at these pictures down here, smallmouth. And of course, Pope goes out and finds himself a largemouth. That's what he does. He likes those greenies, but like throughout the rest of the crowd, tons of spotted bass. And dude, I think you give us like another year. I mean, there's obviously been a good spawn, and I know that several people were talking about catching the F1s and stuff. Those little dudes are aggressive, and you mix those F1s in with the spotted bass that are in that lake. Holy cow, man! Like it's going to be a really fun lake to fish as now that it starts to balance back out. But I mean, I don't know if you got a chance to watch the video yet or not, but guys, the spotted bass for us, I mean, it was just stupid stuff. I get that one first keeper in the boat on the Kitech, literally just dangle my bait over the side while we're putting it in the live well, and another one bites. I mean, that bait couldn't have been half a foot below the keel of the boat. I mean, that thing come up there and ate it. And I mean, I did not reel at all. I literally just picked the line up into the boat. So they were crazy. But I found that interesting that we had a lot of spotted bass brought to the scales this time, as well as you all had all three smallmouths. So those patterns again show us that in this time of year, that early fall. Now, as we're going into this next tournament, we'll talk about this too. But like we get around these full moons, that those crawfish starting to molt, those crawfish starting to get a little more active again too. That bite's going to come back around. But here in that early fall transition, guys, those fish are looking up. They're around those bait balls, and I could see it on Panoptics. And throwing something that's up in that water column was key, especially that morning when the bite was really good. So Kelsey, bud, let's go ahead and break down what it is that your setup, the jerkbait you're throwing, the color, line size, whatever else it is. And just kind of how you all feel comfortable about it. Because you all have had, this is not your first great finish and win in the club with a jerkbait. You all have done this multiple times. Now, I know you said it was the first time you've landed one, but your dad has kicked our butt multiple times now with a jerkbait. He loves to throw it. So I'll give it to you, man, and you go ahead. I'm actually going to blow you up here on the screen a little bit so people can see what you're talking about. Go ahead, man.
All right. So what we really look for is, like I said, we look for those deeper areas to throw this jerkbait. I mean, places that are close to deep water. I was throwing my stuff on a 7-foot medium. I was actually throwing on a medium heavy rod with 10-pound line. When I'm throwing my spinning rods, I mean, I'm pretty basic. I've got 10-pound line on all my spinning rods and 14-pound on my casters. So we prefer a deeper diving jerkbait. I mean, especially this time of year. I mean, you look at what these fish were doing. I mean, we were catching our fish in probably 10 to 15 foot of water is where they were, but they were probably sitting in maybe just below that. I would say probably 17, 18 foot, looking up, of course. This right here is the jerkbait that Dad was throwing. It is a Lucky Craft Pointer 100 deep diver. This jerkbait goes about anywhere from, I would say, 7 to 10 feet. It says shallower. I mean, but that's,
you get a good cast, but you're also throwing it on that spinning rod. You're getting a really good cast with that.
Oh yeah,
and more time to work it down there.
I mean, I have a hard time throwing something like that on a bait caster anyway. It's just because I'm not coordinated enough. But
well, it's tiresome
so that's why
to do it on a bait caster.
I mean, and I mean, that's another thing. I'm throwing some lightweight spinning rods, so I mean that does make it key to not wear yourself out all day.
Right.
But
one other thing I want to interject really quick is that also helped a lot with as much wind as we had there.
Mm-hmm.
I backlashed a couple times with the bait caster and a jerk bait. So that going to a spinning rod in that situation also helps with some of the backlashing that you'll suffer with
Oh, yeah.
a bait caster. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. No, you're good. So yeah, this is a Pointer 100 deep diver. In the color is chartreuse shad. Pretty basic color. It's basically the only color that I really like to throw. I mean, Dad likes to throw it a lot. That's his go-to color in a jerkbait. That's the one he's going to throw 9 times out of 10. The jerkbait I was throwing is also Lucky Craft. It's the same color pattern. It's just a little, just some subtle differences. It's actually the Stacy 90 version 2 SP, but it'll actually go just a little bit deeper than the Pointer 100. They're both Lucky Craft baits, same color, but no, that's what we were throwing out. Actually, here, I'll show it to you. So here's my rod and reel setup. Here's the jerk bait I was throwing. See, it's just if you compare it to this one, I mean, hardly any difference. Just, I think the profile, I think it's almost just a little bit thinner profile, which makes it a little easier to get. They're both suspending jerk baits. Like I said, 7 foot. If you can see that, here, I'll have to turn it around.
No, you were good, man. We could see it on there.
Well, it's upside down. But 7 foot. Is it upside down now? But 7 foot. No, I had it upside down. Okay. You're going to have to cut that out.
No, we're going to roll with that because that's some good stuff. People need a good
but
laugh. So, but now tell me this.
7 foot medium heavy.
Okay, but tell me this. So yours was a 7 foot medium heavy. And
Dad's throwing his on a 7 foot medium action. It's actually a Falcon Creek squirrel tail rod.
Okay, so he's throwing the medium action, still throwing a 7-footer.
Yes. So
see, the one thing I have noticed with me, being as short as I am, I prefer something in that 6'6" to 6'8", because otherwise, especially with a bait caster where it's a lot less tiresome if you're jerking kind of straight down, somewhat. I'm always slapping the water, or I'm slapping the trolling motor whenever I try to do it.
Same with me. If you'll notice, I mean, the only rods that I have that are over 7'2" is really my my Alabama rig rod. That's about it, because I mean, I stick in that anywhere from 6'6" to 7'2". That's my ideal rod size. I mean, especially from height.
Right.
I mean,
us being shorter guys, like it's you need to be able to work it comfortably, and we lose a little bit maybe on casting distance and stuff, but with that longer rod, especially in the case of a jerk bait, it's just something that would be a lot more hassle for us. So, all right, so we're throwing a deep diver. Did we change up ever to throwing something shallower, or you had the confidence in that, and that's what you went with?
First thing in the morning, Dad, like I said, Dad caught his, and I actually had a shallower diving jerkbait tied on, but I wasn't getting bit in that little flurry. I mean, I was casting in the same spot, and he just kept on getting bit. I was throwing a shallower one, and at the time his bait was hung up in the net, and I said, well, you just grab that jerkbait out of my box and tie it on for me, and I will get your bait loose from the net. Okay. And when he done that, that's when I stood up, made my first cast, and caught that 4-pounder. So I mean, the deep diver was the go-to bait, especially that morning. We didn't see any really coming up on top. We weren't getting any bites on top. So I mean, they were suspending, sitting down there.
That's what we saw too. Like, we ditched the top water really, really quick. I mean, I threw a whopper plopper and I had a bite on it, but we went down this entire bluff and only had like that one blow up. And I was like, well, I'm going to scrap this. Dad can keep throwing a buzz bait or a long A, whatever he was throwing at that time. I said, I'm going to jump over and throw a Kitech for a second. So, but
yeah, and we did throw that a little bit later too, as well. But like I said, just the size, after that first little flurry, the size was gone.
Okay. So the other thing I will say, and guys, go watch the video that we have, because it's what's fun about the club tournaments is we got 3 different boats with cameras in them. So you get to see 3 different thought processes, 3 different ways of approaching the lake, and just 3 different outcomes. But you'll notice that the people catching fish, like they weren't running all over the lake. And we had talked about that in the last video or last time, that like, I'm going to be running everywhere when we talked to each other before this tournament. But like, once you find fish, settle in, because in the fall, if you locate fish that are biting, like they are in that area because there's bait, they are in that area for a reason. You're running away from fish. Now, if you've practiced and you know where there's some other fish, go. But for us, and you were talking about it earlier, Kelsey, you're going through baits like crazy in the mornings, because if we haven't got to practice for an event, for instance, this one, you don't know what the bite is. You don't know what the best bait is.
You're just scrambling to find something that will entice a bite.
Yeah. And when you find it, you jump on it and you don't let it go.
So one thing I didn't touch on was just cadence.
Okay.
I mean, there was kind of a little bit of method to the madness as far as what I was doing. I would do like a 1-2 pause, but I mean very short pause, because I mean those fish were very active. So I mean, especially with that water temperature being still pretty warm, you still want to work a jerkbait like you would in the summer. Just slap it. I mean, not hardly giving it much pause. But I was doing like a 1-2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, and with maybe a second of a pause. So I mean, just working that bait really fast through that water column.
And that's a good point, because like Kelsey was saying, guys, we still had 71, 72 degree water temperatures at this time.
Yeah, I think we were reading 72.
The water's still super warm here mid-October, which is not, everybody acts like, oh my gosh, it should be colder, but like in the last few years, that's not uncommon anymore. Like, I'll be honest with you, we're recording this a couple weeks later right now. Like, it's colder than normal last week or so. So I mean, it's getting cool.
Past couple years at least, yeah.
So, well, awesome stuff, man. So jerkbait, guys, a jerkbait, excellent choice, fall transition. A spinnerbait, excellent choice, fall transition. The Kitech, excellent choice in the fall transition. And I mentioned another one in the video the other day that I wish I would have tried, was a spy bait. I think a spy bait could have played. And if these fish are a little bit deeper, Boone is not near as deep, and the fish don't get near as deep as they do on Holston or Watauga, where we're going next. So even a Demiki will play possibly in this next tournament on Watauga, just because you can get over them a little bit more and there's a little bit more space. These fish right here on Boone, like Kelsey were saying, max for me, probably they were sitting in 20 to 25, feeding on bait balls that were sitting up in about 10. So I'd like for them to be a little bit deeper than that.
And you got to think about this. I mean, I know there was several fish that I mean, casting out to that school, we tried to stay off of it.
Right.
And you got to think these fish are going to move with whatever is going on. So, I mean, I can't tell you how many short strikes I had at the boat with throwing that jerkbait, and you don't know how far they've fought it. Because I mean, you and I both know, I mean, even later in the year, as we get into this next month, November, that long A bite, I mean, we've watched them move on the Panoptics, 20 feet to come up and hit a long A. So, I mean,
they're traveling, and we all know they're fast too.
Oh yeah. So, I mean, just if you can get your graph set up to where you can read those depths and see where those fish are, if you find them, I mean, don't be afraid to throw stuff that's over their head, because I mean, they'll move for it.
Even if it's 10, 15 feet. And again, we had good water clarity too. Now, I mean, you're not going to do something like that if there's less than a foot of visibility. But in our case, we had good water clarity. But I think a lot of people struggle with a jerkbait because you're not hitting anything, right? It's not like a jig or a crankbait. You're not feeling anything. Most of the time you're throwing that jerkbait, it's suspended up in the water column. You're never feeling anything. You've got to trust that those fish are there, and you've got to trust that you're going to get a bite. So getting some confidence on that is a big thing. And that's something that your dad already has, and that's one of his go-tos. Definitely. So the jerkbait, guys, is a killer this time of year, and still should play. And guys, we've got Boone rolling back around. The Classic is going to be on Boone. I think it'll be an excellent tournament. I do think you'll see a very different playing field for us.
Yeah.
I think it'll play a lot shallower. I think you'll see a lot of square bills, a lot of crankbaits, but that's another show for later. But right now, Kelsey, let's jump into what we've got going on with these points, man. It's getting, get our heads out of the way so we can see the logo and see the points. Oh my goodness. So guys, the Angler of the Year has bonus points in play. So big fish gets you a bonus point, a spotted bass over 3 pounds, a smallmouth over 4 pounds, a largemouth over 5 gets you a bonus point. So Kelsey, with the win that he and his dad had, tied my dad for the lead, but then he had big fish for the tournament and that smallmouth that was over 4, so that jumped him 2 points ahead. So Kels, we are going into the last regular season event, and down there on the team that you can see at the bottom of the screen, 2 points separate us.
Mm-hmm.
Right? 2 points. Your fallback is a 43rd. Our fallback's a 45. So the way this plays out for the team, one last event, guys, our regular season, our team of the year ends at the regular season, and then the classic is individual points. So going into this last one here, we are looking at a guaranteed 45 for me and Dad, which means you all have to have a 47 or better to beat us. And I guess we have the tiebreaker in weight, don't we?
Yes. You do.
You don't have to act that demoralized about it. You're leading the points. I get to take a little bit of pride in the team. But so I guess you need to have a 48, right? So a top 3 to take the team, but that's a side order. The focus is the AOY. I know you and Dad have been giving each other a hard time and going on because we got 2 events left. You got Watauga coming up, and you've got a 43 to fall back on. He's got a 45. So technically, if both of you just mess it up majorly and 0 in this event coming up, you're tied going into the last tournament of the year. Now I'm gonna be honest with you. I may just knock all his fish off and get Bob to knock all your fish off just so we can see you all go into this last thing tied. I think that might make it pretty fun.
I don't want to go into the last tournament tied, just to be honest with you, because I don't know what. Like I said, Boone.
We don't know what it's going to hold.
I think we got lucky that tournament.
Well, it would be interesting, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think with the way the weather's going on, I think we're going to have some good changes. So that's the play out that we got, guys. So we've got a chance. So both of them, like I said, they're fallbacks. They're 2 drops that they're using right now: a 0 and a 43 for Kelsey, a 45 and a 45 for Dad. Dad's next drop would be another 45. Kelsey's would be a 43. So if they were both to have worse than those finishes, so let's say that Kelsey finishes 42nd, or gets 42 points, not 42nd, gets 42 points, he automatically picks up that 43 that he has there. If Dad were to finish worse than 45th, he automatically picks up that 45, and those would be their points. But it will be fun to see how this plays out with just 2 points separating you all. And then we go into the Classic. And guys, we'll do a special show for the Classic. Hopefully Kelsey tried to do a special show for the Classic today. He drove all the way out to Gray to try to do a live show, and we were not doing that.
I misunderstood.
Communication. I messed up on the communication. So we'll do a good show, not live, but we'll do it all together, hopefully there with those 2 that are leading, and it'll be fun. But the points are close. You can see all of these guys. If they're within 20, 25 points, I think we're going to have close to 20 to 30 guys, 20 to 25 guys in the Classic for sure. So they could jump up that much. There could be that much of a swing. So depending on drops, because drops will still play in that Classic tournament, but it's making it fun, guys. It's making it interesting. I am loving it with the points being this close and everybody jockeying for position. It has been a very fun year to give each other a hard time and just rag on each other while we're out there. All right. So let's get into the Watauga Lake preview, Kels. This one, and boys, if you have not looked at the forecast yet, I may be breaking your heart with this one, okay? Forecast for that morning. 30s, dress in layers, 30s in the morning, guys. and only 40s for the high. So it ain't going to warm up much. Post front one day. Now, the reason I put that in there is one thing that I have realized fishing different tournaments where you get to practice maybe the day that the front's coming through, and then you're fishing after the front, or the front comes through before practice starts, and then you're fishing the next 2 days that are post front. The first day after a front still seems to be good to me. Now, it may not be as awesome as the day of the front or right before the front, but it's not as bad as day 2 or day 3 after the front. It seems to still, you still seem to have a good bite going on. Kelsey, do you kind of feel the same way?
Yeah. I mean, as long as the conditions aren't, high skies, bluebird skies, high pressure system moving in right after it.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what it is about that. Those just kick our butts every time.
And I think it's the clear water.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is just the clear water. It hurts so bad to have those bluebird skies. Whereas if we had some dingier water and stuff, or grass in the lakes, the cover would make it a little bit better. But guys, I will say this for sure. And Kelsey said it well. Layers. I put on here for my thoughts. Take care of your mental and clothing prep first. Kelsey was out with me. What was that? 2 years ago when your rain suit failed on you?
Yeah. Yeah, that was 2019. Yeah.
So, I mean, and he got soaking wet, which right now we're not supposed to have any moisture. That's all supposed to come in. It's supposed to snow the night before, okay, and the day before, and have some rain. But just be prepared for that, because if you're focused on how cold you are, if you're focused on your fingertips not working, your fingers, your hands not working well, you're not going to be focused on fishing. So take care of the mental prep and the clothing prep first. And my recommendation is some gloves that you can cut the fingers out of. Kelsey, you all run wool gloves that you cut the fingers out of.
Yes. Wool gloves are amazing. Just saying, I've got some that are made by Fish Monkey.
Yep.
They're wool, fingers cut out. And the thing about wool products is, they get wet, but you don't lose your heat. Like they stay warm. Right. So definitely invest in those.
Some gloves. Cut with the fingers cut out of them. You definitely need those. And one thing I'll do anymore is I have some thinner gloves that I'll run if it's not too cold. Like 30s and 40s are cold, but for me, going into the fall, it doesn't seem to hurt as bad. Now in the spring or like late winter, when it's 30s all day, yeah, you need a little bit thicker gloves. But I'll wear some thinner gloves just to keep the wind and the chill off my hands. And then I have some 100-mile-an-hour gloves that when I run down the lake, I can just slide those on over those thinner gloves. Exactly. And go running down the lake. Yeah. I know Sims has some that are like mittens. Does yours have?
I've got some old ones like that here. Just give me 1 second and I'll grab them.
All right, I'll keep talking, guys. So, so you've got in that prep. Think about those layers. I love a good base layer, a good thermal layer. Columbia makes a good one. Under Armour makes a good one. But what I love about those good base layers is they hold in the body heat, but they're not bulky. They're not something that weighs you down when you try to move, try to bend. So having a good base layer like what Columbia makes or what Under Armour makes allows you not to feel so bulky that you can't move, but it still holds that heat in really, really well.
And one thing I've noticed, and some pros do this, that I just picked up on maybe about a year ago, surgical gloves. A lot of them run surgical gloves because they're thin, they're latex. They keep your hand. They're going to keep your hands warm because it's not breathing. It'll keep that wind off of you, and you can actually still have your feel. Yeah. So I mean, that's another thing that if you don't want to spend a bunch of money on gloves, try
some
that.
Latex liners, some latex liners. Yeah, definitely. So hot hands.
Yes.
Take hot hands. Put them. You all had talked. Steve Jenkins had talked in the past about putting them kind of in the cuff of the glove to kind of where your blood flow is there, where your veins are.
If you wear a sweatband, that's one of the tricks they said is wear those like wristbands for sweat, and you put it right there where your blood's flowing into your hand.
Yep.
And that it'll heat that blood up that's going in. And same thing with putting them on your neck.
Okay.
And they'll keep your body warm. So there
you go. So guys, some of those things, and the other one that hot hands makes them for your feet to put out there and your toes. The one thing I like to do, I probably won't do it in this tournament because typically when I do that, it's what I'm getting ready to talk about. It's like 20s and the highs in the 30s.
Yeah.
But I will take a thin pair of socks, put them on, put those toe warmers on my feet, then take my wool socks and put them over so it creates that pocket and it helps keep your feet warm, keeps those toe warmers from moving around, getting stuck in the shoe, and makes everything work really well. So again, take care of that part first. Get ready based on your clothing and your gear so that you're not worried about the cold weather. But then let's get to the better part. Okay. Yeah. Nobody wants to talk about getting dressed. We ain't women. So
pneumonia stinks. Just remember that.
But let's talk about catching some fish. Okay. I personally think, especially looking at what our lunar table shows us here, guys, it's a good day. This thing ranks it from 0 to 100. I think the Boone day was like a 13 or something, maybe a 19 at the highest. This is an 80. So it's a good day as far as what type of moon phase we're in and just the condition, the setup we're going to have there. You can see on here that we are going to have a bite window, of course, something super early at night. But then you are going to have a really good bite again about 10 a.m. is going to be that next peak during our fishing time. And the later peak, the next high one, is after the tournament will be over, but it should be improving. It's going to be climbing up later in the day. But what I put on here, guys, the things I'm thinking about, Kelsey already mentioned them, flats, something with a steep drop near it. Points. Those set, and you may move from those main lake points where a lot of people were talking about on Boone. Now we're moving into some secondary points because we're almost a month later.
Yeah.
But the other thing, Kelsey, that I want people to keep in mind with Watauga is the fact that we're going to have Thursday, Friday is going to be rain and possible snow. Watauga has a solid largemouth population. Don't rule out running back into some of these creeks and pockets that have runoff and creeks coming into them, or there's several of them that have waterfalls coming into them, and looking for some dirty water. Because if you can find that dingy water, the bait and the bass are going to move into that, and then you can start throwing some crankbaits around, your spinner baits, chatter baits. So Kelsey, what else are you thinking? And I put a few more things down there at the bottom, but what else are you thinking? First thoughts going into that weekend.
Here's a little bit of my game plan, and this is what I'm thinking. First thing in the morning, try and key in on some smallmouth. Try and find those big smallmouth if you can. Then after, if you can find a limit, try and improve with some largemouth. If we can find some of those bigger largemouths, so possibly moving back into some of those big cuts and where there's some creeks or muddy water, definitely some brush or whatever. Trying to find some of those big largemouths because we know that Watauga has some big largemouth. And then if none of that helps, if none of that works out, I'm going to go look for some spots and try to save the day. But no, that's basically my plan, is just trying to. I think those smallmouth are going to be key first thing in the morning, earlier in the day. I think they're going to be more active then, and then, like I said, try and find some of those largemouth, and then, like I said, if all else fails, try and chase some spots and try and save the day.
That is the nice thing about Watauga, that you do have all three species. You can go run some very different water to try to change up your day. It's not one of those lakes where, well, I'm just going to go fish this point and fish this point. No, if you want to go look for largemouth, go run you some creeks, go run you some timber. If you want to fish for smallmouth and some big smallmouth, you can hang around down at the lower end of the lake and fish those points and fish those steeper, deeper pockets. Or if you want to go chase some spotted bass, you can. And those really spread out throughout the entire lake.
Oh yeah.
But I still think have a top water ready to go, guys, at some point. Now, like we said, for me, that top water is going to be a long A instead of a spook or something, just because I have a little more faith in that, and I enjoy it. Like, you just can't beat the silence of that bait. And I'm going to get up there on Monday of the week going into this tournament, and hopefully I'm going to make a long A video, guys. So they'll pop up on the YouTube channel for y'all. But the A rig, I don't like to throw it, but the A rig could play. It has played in the past up there this time of year. Kitex, of course. And like I said, if we get some heavy rains and there's some good runoff, if you see a creek that's got some dirty water in the back of it, don't be scared to just run to the very back, because we know that's where the bait are going. They're heading back into those creeks. The falling water slows that down a little bit, but if there's some water and some stain, they're going to run in there to it, and the bass are going to run to it as well. So keep those things in mind as you get ready for this event coming up on November the 6th.
I'll be honest with you. Come Saturday morning, when you see the deck of my boat, it's going to look like I'm a very confused person. I'm going to have
look like Brian Thrift. You're going to have 30 rods laid out everywhere.
I'm going to have a jerkbait. I'm going to have my top water, which will be probably a long gay or pop R, crankbaits, Kitex, spinnerbaits, even a jig, because I that's one of those things, it could play, even if it gets slow or whatever. I mean, I'm going to have a little bit of moving, slow, middle of water, a
little bit of
even
everything.
if I have to drop on them, I'm going to have a little bit of everything on the boat.
Yep.
And that's what you got to do this time of year.
You do. Those fish could be all over the map. So going into this one, guys, as far as winning weight, we're going back to a 5 fish per team. Depending on how that weather plays, I think it's going to be one extreme or the other. I think it's going to be less than 10 pounds to win it, or I'm leaning towards the good side. I think you're going to have an average of 3 to 3.5 pounds. So I think it's going to take somewhere in the neighborhood of 16 to 17.5 pounds to win this event. What do you think, Kelsey?
I think you're pretty spot on with that. I mean, if you go back and look at last year's weights, we had an exceptionally warmer year, I would say. It was cold. It was cooler that morning, but when the day got up, I remember I was thinking, why am I wearing so many clothes?
Yes.
Why do I have so much clothing on? Because it got hot.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you look at it, I think, what was it, 1091, and you had a 10.
Yeah.
There wasn't even a pound difference. It was another 10-pound bag, and then I think Dad and I were in like third with like 3 or 5 pounds, maybe something like that. So I mean, it dropped off.
It's tough.
Ridiculously. It was tough, but I think with the weather conditions we're looking at, I think the fish are going to be moving. I think they're going to be more active. They just weren't that this time last year, because our tournament was on the 7th last year.
Yeah.
So
and it just hadn't cooled off
for a better tournament.
Yeah, it's just cooling off so much better, guys. That water temperature's falling. It's getting them going. But I think it's going to be the half. It's going to be one extreme or the other. I don't think you're going to have like that middle ground. It's either going to be really, really tough on everybody, or there's going to be a big bag brought in. So, guys, as we wrap this up, we've got the big bass of the year for each one of those species. It's sponsored by TVA Knoxville Credit Union, guys. This is an event that all 3 of those could fall. As bad as neither one of you want to lose that, relinquish that lead. You could have a largemouth that's 8 pounds. You could have a smallmouth that's in the 5-pound class. You could have a spot that's near 4 pounds on this lake. So there's a lot of things going on. The TOY will be, the team of the year will be decided at this event coming up on Watauga. And then, of course, the Angler of the Year race will continue with this one, and then our classic on Boone. But I'm getting excited for it, Kelsey. I hope you're getting excited about it. We have a lot of things to think about going into next week and getting ready for this tournament. Guys, hopefully you'll see this probably on Tuesday. So it'll be just a few days before that event takes place. Maybe earlier if I can get my Wi-Fi to work wonderfully. Technology's a cruel person. But Kelsey, as we close this thing out, and again, I want to say thank you to Uncle Ray's Potato Chips and to Tri-City Logistics, who have sponsored our last event on Boone with Uncle Ray's, and Tri-City Logistics, who's sponsoring Watauga. Say thank you to them. Kelsey, what is your world's greatest advice to these guys as we head into Watauga and possibly a winter wonderland?
Just warm, be safe, and stay dry.
Stay dry is the key. Lynn Fegans, don't fall in, man. We don't need you falling in on a cold day. It'll be a cold ride back to the boat ramp. Guys, we will see you later. Thank you for watching. Have a great one.